Oh, Gauranga. All right, I think we're just about ready to start. Okay, here we are. All right, so we'll start chanting. Got everything set up. Jaya Radhamadhama Jaya Kunjavayari Jaya Radhamadhama Jaya Kunjavayari Gopichana Ballabha Jaya Kirivado Radhe Jaya Kirivado Radhe Gopinana Ballabha Jaya Kirivado Radhe Jaya Kirivado Radhe Yasoda Nandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Jaya Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tirapanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Panachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Jai Om. Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Acharya, also Teta Sitashi, Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Param Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadadha, Shiva Siddhi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopika Shyam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Machuram Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharne Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deja Tarni. So, Om Gana Timirandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shikadve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual masters, Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Let me just send one message out to someone. Wow. Okay. Okay. Send it out. Okay, so we're going to go to the Caitanya Caritamrta for all you sincere souls. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, I'll just write this thing down. I just remembered a letter I forgot to send. Okay, so we will share our screen and go to the Caitanya Caritamrta. Here we go. 1 second to get it set up. Okay, we're going to begin with text, that's right, text 74, and the 12th chapter of the Caitanya Caritamrita's Adi Leela, and this chapter deals with the branches, the sub-branches of Advaita Acharya and Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. Say Acharyara Kriparabhajana Annaya se Paila se Caitanya Caritamrta. By the mercy of Advaita Acharya, the devotees who strictly follow the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attain the shelter of Lord Chaitanya's lotus feet without difficulty. Achuteriye mata e mata sara, aram yatamata saba haila chara kara. It should be concluded that the path of Achyutananda is the essence of spiritual life. Those who do not follow this path simply scattered. Say Acharya Ganimori Kauti Namaskara Chitananda Praya Chaitanya Jivana Yanhara. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances millions of times to the Achyutananda's actual followers whose life and soul was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Eta Kahilan Acharya Goshaniyara Gana Dinaskanda Shakara Kaila Sanshepaganana. Thus I briefly described the three branches of Chutananda, Krishna, Mishra, and Gopal of Sri Advaitacharya's descendants. Shaka Upashaka Tara Nahika Ganana Kichunat Matra Kahi Kari Digdarashana. There are multifarious branches and sub-branches of Dvaitacharya. It is very difficult to enumerate them fully. I have simply given you a glimpse of the whole trunk and its branches and sub-branches. Shri Gadadhara Pandita Shakati Mahottama Tanra Upachaka Kichu Kariye Ganana. After describing the branches and sub-branches of Dvaitacharya, I shall now attempt to describe some of the descendants of Sri Gadadhara Pandit, the most important among the branches. Shakashrestha Dhruvananda Shitara Brahmachari Bhagavatacharya Harirasa Brahmachari. The chief branches of Sri Gadadhara Pandit were Sri Dhruvananda, Ashtadhara Brahmachari, Harirasa Brahmachari, and Bhagavata Acharya. Text 152 of the Gauragana Dashtipika describes Sri Dhruvananda Brahmachari as an incarnation of Lalita, and text 194 and 199 describes Shidhara Brahmachari as the gopi known as Chandra Latika. Now, that may appear to be a little interesting, let's say, because Swarup Damodar Goswami is sometimes described as Lalita, and here we find someone else. So the explanation is that in many cases these are empowered incarnations. Ananta Acharya Kapidata Mishra Nayana Gangam Mantri Mamutakor Kanta Balarana. The fifth branch was Ananta Acharya, the sixth Kapidata, the seventh Nayana Mishra, the eighth Gangamantri, the ninth Mamu Thakura, and the 10th Kanta Bharana. Text 197 and 207, the Gauragana Dashtipika describe Kapidata as the gopi named Kalakanti. Text 196 and 207 describe Nayana Mishra as the gopi named Nitya Manjari. And text 196 and 205 describe Ganga Mantri as the gopi named Chandrika. Let's turn that up a little bit. Mamu Thakur, whose real name was Jagannatha Chakravarti, was the nephew of Sri Nilambara Chakravarti, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's grandfather. In Bengal, a maternal uncle is called Mama, and in East Bengal and Orissa, Mamu. Thus, Jagannath Chakravarti was known as Mama or Mamu Thakura. Mamu Thakur's residence was in the district of Faridpur, in the village known as Magdoba. After the demise of Sri Gadadhar Pandit, Mamu Thakura became the priest in charge of the temple known as Tota Gopinath in Jagannath Puri. According to the opinion of some Vaishnavas, Mamu Thakur was formerly known as Shri Rupa Manjari. No, it's interesting, Rupa Goswami is known as Rupa Manjari also. These are very interesting descriptions. The followers of Mamu Thakur were Raghunath Goswami, Ramachandra, Radhavallabha, Krishna Jivana, Shyamashundara, Shantamani, Harinatha, Navina Chandra, Matilala, Dayamayi, and Kunjavihari. Kanta Bharana, whose original name was Sri Ananta Jataraja, was the gopi named Gopali in Krishna Leela. Bhugarbha Goshani Ara Bhagavata Dasa Yedvayasi Kaila Brindavane Vasa. The 11th branch of Gadadhar Goswami was Bhugarbha Goswami, the 12th was Bhagavata Das. Both of them went to Vrindavan and resided there for life. So Prabhupada explains that Bhugarbha Goswami, formerly known as Prema Manjari, was a great friend of Lokanath Goswami, who constructed the temple of Gokulananda. Let me just turn this off. This is a little disturbing having this go off. Constructed the temple of Gokulananda. Okay. One of the 7 important temples of Vrindavan, namely those of Govinda, Gopinath, Madan Mohan, Radha Raman, Shyamasundar, Radha Damodar, and Gokulananda, which are authorized institutions of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So these are the prominent temples in Vrindavan. Vaninatha Brahmachari Vada Mahashaya Vallabha Chaitanya Dasa Krishna Prema Maya. The 13th branch was Vaninatha Brahmachari, and the 14th was Vallabha Chaitanya Das. Both of these great personalities were always filled with love of Krishna. Shri Vaninatha Brahmachari is described in the 10th chapter, verse 114 of the Adi Leela. A disciple of Vallabha Chaitanya named Nalini Mohana Goswami established a temple of Madan Gopal in Navadvipa. Srinatha Chakravarti Arahudava Udavadasa Jitam Mitra Kashtakaka Jagannatha Dasa. The 15th branch was Srinatha Chakravarti, the 16th Uddhava, the 17th Caitanya, and the 18th Jagannatha Das. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhasha, the Shakha Nirnaya, verse 13, mentions Srinath Chakravarti as a reservoir of all good qualities and an expert in the service of Lord Krishna. Similarly, verse 35 mentions Uddhavadas as being greatly qualified in distributing love of Godhead to everyone. The Gauraganadesh Dipika 202 mentions Chitam Mitra as the gopi named Shama Mantri. Chitam Mitra wrote a book entitled Krishna Madhurya, means the sweetness of Krishna. Jagannath Das was a resident of Vikramapura near Dhaka, that's in Bangladesh. His birthplace was in the village known as Kashtakata or Katadia. His descendants now reside in villages known as Adiyala, Kamarapada, and Paikapada. He established a temple of Yashomadava. The worshippers in this temple are the Goswamis of Adiyala. As one of the 64 Sakhis, that means the girlfriends of Radharani, he was formerly an assistant of Chitra Devi Gopi named Tilakini. The following is a list of his descendants, namely Raman Rishringa, Ramagopala, Ramachandra, Sanatana, Mukta, Rama, Gopinatha, Goloka, Harimohan, Shiromani, Rakala, Raja, Madhava, and Lakshmi Kanta. The Shakha Niranaya mentions that Jagannath Das preached the Hare Krishna movement in the district or state of Tripura. It's very far north in India. So, Sri Hari Acharya Sati Purya Gopala Krishnadasa Brahmachari Pushpa Gopala. The 19th branch was Sri Hari Acharya, the 20th, Sati Purya Gopala, the 21st, Krishnadas Brahmachari, and the 22nd, Pushpa Gopala, means flower Gopala. The Gauraganadesh Dipika 196 and 207 mentions that Hari Achari was formerly the gopi named Kalakshi. Sati Puriya Gopala is celebrated as a preacher of the Hare Krishna movement in Vikramapura in East Bengal, now Bangladesh. Krishnadasa Brahmachari was formerly among the group of Sakhis, that means the girlfriends of Radharani, known as the Ashta Sakhis. Wow. His name was Indulekha. Krishnadas Brahmachari lived in Vrindavan. There's a tomb in the Radha Damodar temple known as Krishnadasa's tomb. Some say that this is the tomb of Krishnadas Brahmachari, and others say that it is of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. In either case, we offer our respects because both of them were expert in distributing love of Godhead to the fallen souls of this age. The Shakha Nirnaya mentions that Pushpa Gopala was formerly known as Swarna Gramaka. Shri Harsha Raghumishra Pandita Lakshminatha Bhangavati Chaitanya Dasa Shri Raghunatha. The 23rd branch was Sri Harsha, the 24th, Raghu Mishra, the 25th, Lakshminatha Pandit, the 26th, Bhangavati Chaitanya Das, and the 27th, Raghunatha. Raghu Mishra is described in the Gauragana Dashnipika 195 and 201 as Karpura Manjari. Similarly, Lakshmi Natha Pandit is mentioned as Rason Mata, and Bhanga Vatichen in Caitanya is mentioned as Kali. Wow. That's not Kali Yuga, that's Kali, the goddess. The Shaka Nirnaya states that Bhagavati Chaitanya was always seen with eyes full of tears. He also had a branch of descendants. Their names were Mathura Prasada, Rukmini Kanta, Jivana Krishna, Yugala Kishora, Ratana Krishna, Radhamadava, Ushamani, Vaikunthanatha, and Lala Mohana, or Lala Mohana Shaha Shankhanidhi. Lala Mohana was a great merchant in the city of Dhaka. The Gauragana Dashnipika 194 and 200 mentions that Raghunath was formerly Parangada. So, Amoga Pandita Hasti Gopala Chaitanya Balaba Yadu Ganguli Ara Mangala Vaishnava. The 28th branch was Amoga Pandita, the 29th Hasti Gopala, the 30th Chaitanya Balaba, the 31st Yadu Ganguli, and the 32nd Mangala Vaishnava. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, Sri Mangala Vaishnava was a resident of the village of Tita Kana in the district of Murshidabad. His forefathers were Shaktas who worshipped the goddess Kriteshvari. It is said that Mangala Vaishnava, formerly a staunch brahmachari, left home and later married the daughter of his disciple Prananath Adhikari in the village of Mayanadala. The descendants of this family are known as the Thakuras of Kandada, which is the village in the district of Burdwan near Katwa. Scattered descendants of Mangala Vaishnava, 36 families altogether, still live there. Among the celebrated disciples of Mangala Thakur are Prananath Adhikari, Purushottama Chakravarti of the village of Kandada, and Nrsimha Prasad Mitra, whose family members are well-known Mridanga players. Shuddha Krishna Mitra and Nikunja Vihari Mitra are both especially famous Mridanga players. In the family of Purushottama Chakravarti, there are famous persons like Kunja Vihari Chakravarti and Radha Vallabha Chakravarti, who now live in the district of Birbhum. They professionally recite songs from Chaitanya Mangal. It is said that when Mangala Thakur was constructing a road from Bengal to Jagannath Puri, he found a deity of Radha Vallabha while digging a lake. At that time, he was living in the locality of Kandada, in the village named Ranipura. The Shalagram Shila, personally worshipped by Mangala Thakur, still exists in the village of Kandada. A temple has been constructed there for the worship of Vrindavana Chandra. Mangala Thakur had three sons, Radhika Prasad, Gopi Ramana, and Shama Kishora. The descendants of these three sons are still living. All right. Chakravarti Shivananda Sada Brajavasi Mahashakamadye Tenho Sudrada Vishwasi. Shivananda Chakravarti, the 33rd branch, who always lived in Vrindavan with firm conviction, is considered an important branch of Gadadhar Pandit. The Gauragana Dashnipika 183 mentions that Shivananda Chakravarti was formerly Lubanga Manjari. The Shaka Nirnaya, written by Yodananda Das, also names other branches of Gadadhar Pandit as follows: Madhvacharya, Gopal Das, Sri Dayananda, Balabhavata, that is the Vallabha Sampradaya or Pushti Marg Sampradaya, is very famous. Madhu Pandit, this famous devotee, lived near Katadaha in the village known as Shanivon Nagaram, about 2 miles east of the Katadaha station, and constructed the temple of Gopinathji in Vrindavan. Wow, a very important temple, one of the main temples. Chitananda Chandrasekhara Vakeshwara Pandit, Damodar Bhagavanacharya, Ananta Acharya Varya, Krishnadas, Paramananda Bhattacharya, Bhavananda Goswami, Chaitanya Das, Lokanath Bhatta. This devotee lived in the village of Talakadi in the district of Yashohara, Jaishore, and constructed the temple of Radha Vinod, was the spiritual master of Narottama Das Thakur and a great friend of Bhagarbha Goswami. Wow. So we're talking about Lokanath Goswami, obviously. And I'll tell that story in a second. Govindacharya, Akura Thakur, Sanketa Acharya, Pratipaditya Kamala Kanta Acharya Yadavacharya and Narayana Pan Padihari, a resident of Jagannath Puri. So, as far as Lokanath Goswami is concerned, he and Bhugarva Goswami were great friends, and they were sent to Vrindavan to prepare the grounds for the other Goswamis before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, because Lokanath Goswami loved Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so much that he couldn't bear to see Lord Chaitanya as a sannyasi. So even when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Vrindavan, Lokanath Goswami was somewhere else looking for him, which is really interesting. So wherever Lokanath Goswami didn't see him like face to face again during that lifetime. So Lokanath Goswami was a very humble devotee. He had taken a vow never to initiate any disciples. So Narottama Das Thakur was determined to have Lokanath Goswami as a spiritual master, because this is what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted. So Narottama Das Thakur asked Lokanath Goswami for initiation. Lokanath Goswami said, "No way." So Narottama Das Thakur took a very humble position. Of course, he always was very humble. And he began to serve Lokanath Goswami by regularly cleansing the place where Lokanath Goswami relieved himself. In those days, one relieved themselves outside, I think you understand, in a latrine. And so Lokanath Goswami was wondering who is cleaning this. So one day he spotted Narottama Das Thakur. He became overwhelmed with compassion and agreed to initiate Narottama Das Thakur. So Narottama Das Thakur's spiritual master is Lokanath Goswami. And that's the story. So let's go ahead. Eta Sangchepe Kahilan Panditera Gana Chayara Shaka Upashakara Ganana. Thus I have briefly described the branches and sub-branches of Gadadhar Pandit. There are still many more that I have not mentioned here. Panditera Ganatsaba Bhagavata Danya Pranavalabha Shavara Shri Krishna Chaitanya. All the followers of Gadadhar Pandit are considered great devotees because they have Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as their life and soul. Etina Skandera Kalun Shakara Ganana Yan Sabas Marane Baba Banda Vimochana. Simply by remembering the names of all these branches and sub-branches of the three trunks I have described, Nityananda, Dvaita, and Gadadhar, one attains freedom from the entanglement of material existence. So that's why it's beneficial to hear their names. You're associating with the great personalities. Yan Sabasmarane Pai Chaitanya Charana Yan Sabasmarane Yahayavanshita Purana. Simply by remembering the names of all these Vaishnavas, one can attain the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Indeed, simply by remembering their holy names, one achieves the fulfillment of all desires. Atevatan Sabara Vandye Charana Chaitanya Malira Kahi Lila Anukrama. Therefore, offering my obeisances at the lotus feet of them all, I shall describe the pastimes of the gardener Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in chronological order. Gora Lilamrita Sindhu Apara Gada Kekarite Pare Tana Avagada Sada. The ocean of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is immeasurable and unfathomable. Who can have the courage to measure that great ocean? Tahara Madhurya Gande Lubdahaya Mana Ataiva Tatterahi Chaki Kagatkana. It is not possible to dip into that great ocean, but its sweet, mellow fragrance attracts my mind. I therefore stand on the shore of that ocean and try to taste a drop of it. So we're ending the chapter again. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yarahasha Caitanya Caritamrta Kahi Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Shri Caitanya Caritamrta, following in their footsteps. So one second, please. Let me just... Here we go on to the next chapter. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta. Adi Lila 12th chapter describing the expansions of Advaita Charya and Gadadhar Pandit. And chapter 13 describes the advent, means the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the chapter ceremony is, chapter summary. The 13th chapter describes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. The entire Adi Lila describes Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's household life. And similarly, the Anchal Lila describes his life in the sannyas order. Within the Lord's Anchal Lila, the first 6 years of his sannyas life are called the Madhya Lila. During this time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu toured southern India, went to Vrindavan, returned from Vrindavan, and preached the Sankirtan movement. A learned Brahmana named Upendra Mishra, who resided in the district of Srihata, was the father of Jagannath Mishra, who came to Navadvip to study under the direction of Nilambara Chakravarti and then settled there after marrying Nilambara Chakravarti's daughter, Sachi Devi. Sri Sachi Devi gave birth to 8 children, all daughters who died one after the other immediately after birth. After her 9th pregnancy, she gave birth to a son who was named Vishvarupa. Then in 1407 Shaka era, that is 1486 AD, in the full moon evening of the month of Falguna, with the moon in the constellation of Singha Leo, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared as the son of Sri Sachi Devi and Jagannath Mishra. After hearing of the birth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, learned scholars and Brahmins bringing many gifts came to see the newborn baby. Nilambara Chakravarti, who was a great astrologer, immediately prepared a horoscope, and by astrological calculation he saw that the child was a great personality. This chapter describes the symptoms of this great personality. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Okay. The appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, in about 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks, we have the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is called Gora Purnima. Gora Purnima. That means the golden full moon. So Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are like the moon and the sun. Okay. So let us start this chapter. Sa prasidato Chaitanya Devo Yasha Prasadataka Tallila Varnane Yogya Sadya Syadadamopyayam. I wish the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even one who is fallen can describe the pastimes of the Lord. So humbly he's begging for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy to be able to describe these pastimes, because no one can describe the pastimes unless they have special empowerment. To describe Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Lord Shri Krishna, one needs supernatural power, which is the grace and mercy of the Lord. And you get that by pleasing the Lord's devotees. Without this grace and mercy, one cannot compose transcendental literature. By dint of the grace of the Lord, however, even one who is unfit for a literary career can describe wonderful transcendental topics. Description of Krishna is possible for one who is empowered. Krishna Shakti Vana Nahi Tari Pravartana Caitanya Caritamrta Chapter 7:11. Unless endowed with the mercy of the Lord, one cannot preach of the Lord's name, fame, qualities, form, entourage, and so on. It should be concluded, therefore, that the writing of Sri Caitanya Caritamrta by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami manifests the specific mercy bestowed upon the author, although he thought of himself as the most fallen. We should not consider him fallen because he describes himself as such. Rather, anyone who is able to compose such transcendental literature is our esteemed master. So Jaya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Gaurachandra, Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya, Jaya Nityananda. All glories to Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Advaita Chandra, all glories to Lord Nityananda Prabhu. Jaya Jaya Gadadhar Jaya Srinivasa, Jaya Mukunda Vasudeva, Jaya Haridasa. All glories to Gadadhar Prabhu, all glories to Srivas Thakur, all glories to Mukunda Prabhu and Vasudeva Prabhu. All glories to Haridasa Thakura. Let me think of something. That's interesting. Jaya Damodara Swarupa, Jaya Murari Gupta, Jaya Sabha Chandrodaye Tama Kaila Gupta. All glories to Sarup Damodar Murari Gupta. All these brilliant moons have together dissipated the darkness of this material world. Jaya Shri Caitanya Chandrera Bhakta Chandragana Sabara Prema Jyoshnayo Jvala Tribhuvana. All glories to the moons, which are devotees of the principal moon, Lord Chaitanya Chandra. Their brilliant or bright moonshine illuminates the entire universe. In this verse, we find the moon described as Chaitandra, as Chandragana, which is plural in number. This indicates that there are many moons. In Bhagavad Gita 10:21, the Lord says, Nakshatrana Maham Shashi, among the stars I moon. All the stars are like the moon. Western astronomers consider the stars to be suns, but Vedic astronomers following the Vedic scriptures consider them moons. The sun has the ability to shine powerfully, and the moons reflect the sunshine and therefore look brilliant. In the Caitanya Caritamrta, Krishna is described to be like the sun. The supreme powerful is the supreme personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, or Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his devotees are also bright and illuminating because they reflect the supreme sun. The Caitanya Caritamrta Madhya-lila 22:31 states, Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Hoya Andakara, Yahan Krishna Tahanahi, Mayara Adhikara. Krishna is bright like the sun. As soon as the sun appears, there's no question of darkness in essence. Similarly, the present verse also describes that by the illumination of all the moons, brightened by the reflection of the Krishna sun, or by the grace of all the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the entire world will be illuminated despite the darkness of Kali Yuga. Only the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can dissipate the darkness of Kali Yuga, the ignorance of the population of this age. No one else can do so. We therefore wish that all the devotees of the Krishna consciousness movement may reflect the supreme sun and thus dissipate the darkness of the entire world. And of course, this is a topic we've heard many, many times before, especially that the definition of Maya is the absence of Krishna, or the definition of darkness is the absence of light. Darkness isn't an entity unto itself, it's simply the absence of the entity known as light. Got it. Eta kahila grantarambe mukha vanda ebe kahi Chaitanya lila krama anubandha. Thus I have spoken the preface of the Caitanya Caritamrta. Now I shall describe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in chronological order. Here we go. Pratameta sutarupe kariye ganana Pachnetaha Vishtari Kariba Vivarana. First, let me give a synopsis of the Lord's pastimes, then I shall describe them in detail. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Navadvipe Avatari Atachalisha Vatsara Prakata Vihari. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, inventing himself in Navadvip, was visible for 48 years enjoying his pastimes. Choda Shata Sata Shake Janmera Pramana Choda Shata Panchane Haila Antartana. In the year 1407 of the Shaka era, that's our year, 1486, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and in the year 1455, that's our year, 1534, he disappeared from this world. So it was like 48 years in this world. Chabisha Vatsara Prabhu Kaila Grihabasa Niranta Kaila Krishna Kirtana Vilasa. For 24 years, Lord Chaitanya lived in the Grahastha ashram at his household life, always engaging in the pastimes of the Hare Krishna movement. Chavisha Vatsara Sheshe Kariya Sanyasa Arak Chavisha Vatsara Kaila Nilachale Vasa. After 24 years, he accepted the renounced order of life, sannyas, and he resided for 24 years more at Jagannath Puri. Tadamaje Chaya Vatsara Gamana Gamana Kabu Dakshina Kabu Goda Kabu Brindavana. Of these last 24 years, he spent the first 6 continually touring India, sometimes in South India, sometimes in Bengal, and sometimes in Vrindavana. Ashtadasha Vatsara Rahila Nilachale Krishna Prema Namamrite Vashala Satkale. For the remaining 18 years, he continuously stayed in Jagannath Puri, chanting the nectarian Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He inundated everyone there in a flood of love of Krishna. Garhasche Parbora Lila Harilika Lila Kyana Majanta Lila Shesha Lila Radhui Nama. The pastimes of his household life are known as the Adi Lila, or the original pastimes. The later pastimes are known as the Madhya Lila and Anja Lila, or the middle and final pastime. Just to reiterate, he was in this world for 48 years. First 24, household life in Navadvip. The second 24 were his sannyas years. And the first 6 of those sannyas years, he traveled all over India, different places, South India, Vrindavan, other holy places too. So Adi Lila Majay Parvora Yate Gacharita Sutra Rupe Murari Gupta Karila Kratita. All the pastimes enacted by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Adi Lila were recorded in summary form by Murari Gupta. So in other words, he kept Murari Gupta, who was a doctor, also incarnation of Hanuman. He kept a diary, Kadacha it's called. And that diary, he elaborated on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's different activities. That diary was used as source material for part of the Caitanya Caritamrta. Prabhura Ye Shesha Leela Surapadamadhar Suchakare Granti Lena Grantera Vitara. His later pastimes, the Madhya Lila and Anja Lila, were recorded in the form of notes by his secretary, Sarup Damodar Goswami, and thus kept within a book. Edvi Janera Sutra Dakiya Shunya Varnana Karena Vaishnava Krama Ye Kariya. By seeing and hearing the notes recorded by these two great personalities of Vaishnava devotee, the Lord can know these pastimes one after the other. Balya Puganda Kaishora Yovana Chariveda Ataivari Kande Lila Chariveda. In his original pastimes, there are 4 divisions: Balya, Puganda, Kaishora, and Yovana, childhood, early childhood, later boyhood, and youth. Sarva Sadguna Purnam Tam Vande Paguna Purnimam Yasham Shri Krishna Chaitanyo Vatirna Krishna Nama Bihi. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the full moon evening in the month of Phalguna, an auspicious time full of auspicious symptoms, when Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advented himself with the chanting of the holy name, Hare Krishna. Very nice. Phalguna Purnima Sanjaya Prabhura Janmodaya Se Kalidaiva Yoge Chandra Gahana Yaya. On the full moon evening in the month of Phalguna, when the Lord took birth, coincidentally, there was also a lunar eclipse. Hari Hari Vale Loka Hari Sita Hara Sita Hana Jan Mila Chaitanya Prabhu Nama Jan Maya. In jubilation, everyone was chanting the holy name of the Lord, Hari Hari, and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then appeared after first causing the appearance of the holy name. Now there's, of course, there's the ritual that whenever there's an eclipse, a solar or lunar eclipse, you're supposed to not eat, not do deity worship, not sleep, and basically not do anything except for chant the Lord's holy Lord's holy names. So this was a trick by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is, he appeared during the eclipse so that everyone would be chanting Hare Krishna. Not only did they chant Hare Krishna, but where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared was the Ganges. And so they were half submerged in the Ganges, that means up to their waist, and they were chanting the Lord's holy names, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, during that particular time. And I remember there was one year, and I forget the year right now, after Prabhupada left the planet, when we actually had an eclipse on Gaur Purnima, and I remember going into the Ganges and chanting the Lord's holy names, greeting the appearance of the moon, because on the Gaur Purnima day you're supposed to fast until the moon appears in the evening. Usually the same time as sunset, and actually it is the same time as sunset. Janma Balya Puganda Kaishora Yuvakale Adinama Layai La Prabhu Nana Chale. At his birth, in his childhood, and in his early and later boyhood, as well as in his youth, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, under different pleas, induced people to chant the holy name of Hari, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So even by being born, he got people to chant. Bali Abhava Chale Prabhu, Karena Krantana Krishna, Hari Nama Shuni, Rahai Rodana. In his childhood, when the Lord was crying, he would stop immediately upon hearing the holy names Krishna and Hari. In other words, he would cry like anything, and all the ladies would try to get him to stop, and the only way they could get him to stop was by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then he would smile. Ateva Hari Hari Bale Nari Gana Dekite Ase Yeva Sarva Bandhu Jana. All the friendly ladies who came to see the child would chant the holy names Hari Hari as soon as the child would cry. Agora Hari Bale Tare Ase Sarvanari Otaiva Haila Tanra Nama Gora Hari. When all the ladies saw this fun, they enjoyed laughing and called the Lord Gora Hari. It means Golden Lord. From then on, Gora Hari became another of his names. Of course, he was originally called Nimai because he was born under the Nim tree. How about that? The Nim tree is antiseptic, gets rid of bugs, is very auspicious. Very bitter taste. Whenever I go to Sriram Mayapur, I go to the place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, and what do? I take some leaves from that Nim tree under which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and I eat those leaves and I feel better. Balhya Vayasa Yavat Hate Karitila Poganda Vyasa Yavat Vivaha Nakayela. His education lasted until the date of his Hatte Kari, the beginning of his education. His childhood, not his education. His childhood lasted until the date of Hatte Kari, the beginning of his education, and his age from the end of his childhood until he married is called the Poganda. Vivaha Karile Haila Navina Yovana Sarvatra Loyaila Prabhu Nama Sankirtan. After his marriage, his youth began. In his youth, he induced everyone to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra anywhere and everywhere. Poganda Vayase Padena Padana Shishakane Sarvacha Karena Krishna Namera Vyakyane. During his Poganda age, he became a serious student and also taught disciples. In this way, he used to explain the holy name of Krishna everywhere. Sutra Vritti Panjitika Krishneti Tatparya Shishira Pratita Haya Prabhava Ascharya. When teaching a course in Grama, Vyakarana, and explaining it with notes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught his disciples about the glories of Lord Krishna. All explanations culminated in Krishna, and his disciples could understand them very easily. Thus his influence was wonderful. Srila Jiva Goswami compiled the grammar in two parts, named the Lagu Hari Namamrita Vyakarana and the Brihadari Namamrita Vyakarana. If someone studies these two texts in Vyakarana, or grammar, he learns the grammatical rules of the Sanskrit language and simultaneously learns how to become a great devotee of Lord Krishna. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat Majjhikanda, first chapter, there is a statement about the method by which Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught grammar. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained the aphorisms of grammar to be eternal, like the holy name of Krishna as stated in the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter, text 15. The purport of all revealed scriptures is understanding of Krishna. Therefore, if a person explains anything that is not Krishna, he simply wastes his time laboring hard without fulfilling the aim of his life. If one simply becomes a teacher or professor of education but does not understand Krishna, it is to be understood that he is among the lowest of mankind, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Naradama Mayaya Pritya Jnanaha. If one does not know the essence of all revealed scriptures, he still becomes a teacher. His teaching is like the disturbing brain of an ass. We'll read the next text. Yaridekatari kahi kaha Krishna nama name vasaila navadvipa grama. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a student, he asked whomever he met to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. In this way, he inundated the whole town of Navadvip with the chanting of Hare Krishna. The present Navadvip Dhamma is but part of the whole Navadvip. Navadvipa means 9 islands. These 9 islands, which occupy an area of land estimated at 32 square miles, are surrounded by different branches of the Ganges. In all 9 of these islands of the Navadvip area, there are different places for cultivating devotional service. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 5th Chapter, Text 23, that there are Nava Vida Bhakti, 9 different activities of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashanam, Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam. There are different islands in the Navadvip area for cultivation of these 9 varieties of devotional service. They are as follows: Antardvip, Sivantardvipa, Godrumadvipa, Majadvipa, Dvipa means island, Koladvipa, Ritudvipa, Janudvipa, Modadruma Dvipa, and Rudra Dvipa. According to the settlement map, our ISKCON Navadvip Center is situated on the Rudra Dvipa island below Rudra Dvipa, and Antardvip is Mayapur. There, Sri Jagannath Mishra, the father of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, used to reside. And all these different islands, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as a young man, used to lead his Sankirtan party. He thus inundated the entire area with the waves of love of Krishna. And then we will end there for today. As we went to 30. Okay. So we covered quite a bit today. So let's take some questions in a second detail. All right. So you are all welcome to ask questions if you like.
Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances.
Okay, what's the question?
Question is, was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had a first 4 years as a household life. Was he married?
Yes, he was married. Not for 24 years. Obviously. Household life means he lived at home. Not that he was married for 24 years. That would have meant he got married as soon as he was born. Yes, he was married for a few of those years.
Did he have any children?
From about the time he was 16, and then his first wife passed away. Lakshmi Priya passed away due to separation when he went to East Bengal, and his second wife, Vishnu Priya, worshipped him after he took sannyas, and she was only about 16 years old when he took sannyas.
Any kids?
So, what's that?
Any kids?
No kids.
All our Panchtattvas are married.
What's that?
All our Panchtattva, like Sri Rupa's, when we study the Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivasadi. So all the Panchtattva, all of them are married?
Yes, except for Gadadhar Pandit and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. 3 of them.
You said Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is married.
I'm sorry, yeah, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu married, but he didn't have any children.
All the Panchtattvas are married except Gadadhar Pandit.
Yeah, except for Gadadhar Pandit, they were all married at one particular point. So, yes, they were all married. Except for Gadadhar Pandit. Yes, Srivas Thakur was married, he had children, Dvaitacharya had children, and Lord Nityananda had children. Okay? But Gadadhar obviously wasn't married, didn't have children. Lord Chaitanya didn't have any children. All right. So, who else has questions? Let's get questions from someone else at this point. Sumoka, you have some questions. Hare Krishna.
Yes,
how's Manjamukhi doing?
He's coping up slowly, Gurudev.
That's good. Please give her my blessings. Tell her I've been praying for her.
I'll do that, Gurudev. Regarding, when this Rishi, Durasa Muni, went when Duryodhana sent Durasumuni to go to Pandavas in the forest, and when Draupadi took the meal from that special pot which was given to him by sun god, and and then she was in problem, and the first thing she did, she remembered Krishna. So Krishna came and helped her. So in the case
Yeah.
of Mahabharat, in that Mahabharat, when he was disrobed by Sasha, what we see that she went to Pitama Bhish, she went to Dhritarashtra, she went to Acharya, he went to her husband's.
Yes.
But why didn't she remember Krishna at the first time when she was difficulty there in the forest? She remembered Krishna first. Here, why he remembered Krishna at the last?
Why did she remember Krishna first? Because her husbands were there and she expected them to protect her. A devotee doesn't ask Krishna for protection unless there's no other alternative. You know, you don't ask Krishna for service unless there's no other alternative. If you can do something yourself, don't just sit back and let Krishna do it. You should explore all other alternatives before demanding or asking Krishna to do something. You know, and only if it's an emergency and not for self-centered or selfish reasons should you be asking Krishna. Yeah, it's not that you should be asking Krishna, Krishna, I want something to eat. No, you rascal, you should go and cook it yourself. So that's the point. Okay, who else has a question? Anyone else have a question? Wow, no one else has a question today. This is pretty interesting. Okay, we'll give... Rakesh already asked questions.
Nobody else is asking Guru there.
That's all right. We'll give someone else a question, an opportunity like Nalini Kant. What's your question, Nalini Kant?
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Hare Krishna Radhapadma.
Please accept our humble obeisances, Gurudev. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Good to see you. When are you going to let me come to New Zealand?
If it was in our hand, Gurudev, now. we are really eagerly waiting for you, Guru Maharaj.
All right, talk to the government.
Guru Maharaj, I have a question where in Krishna Leela, when Indra actually does his Govardhan, where Krishna does his Govardhan Leela, all because of Indra's rain and all,
Right.
Krishna is not very unhappy, but at the same time, Krishna is not very happy with Brahma doing Vimohan Leela. Why is it so, and where is this Leela? Where do we find this difference between Krishna's reactions for Indra as well as Brahma?
I don't understand. Krishna was not happy with either of them for doing what they did. What's the question?
The question basically is the effects. I'm not able to word it properly, but the effect of like Krishna was satisfied after Indra asked for forgiveness, but at the same time when Brahma asked for forgiveness, Brahma felt that even though Krishna excused him, but Brahma definitely felt that he committed a big offense, and therefore
Yes.
in Navadvip Leela he comes in as Haridas Thakur.
Yes. So that's actually a blessing to come as Haridas Thakur. And Indra actually had to suffer because the result of his activities is that he continued as Indra, and Indra has so much lust. So which is better, to continue as Indra or to come as Haridas Thakur and be Namacharya in the holy names?
To come as
So it's actually better. It's better. Lord Brahma's punishment was actually much better. And it wasn't a punishment, it was actually a blessing. That's a blessing. Whereas Indra had to remain as Indra, and he had to suffer the effects of all of his lusty activities, because the punishment for offending devotees, and Indra certainly tried to offend the devotees. He tried to kill them all. Whereas Lord Brahma didn't try to kill the devotees. You know, it's actually quite more serious, Indra's offense, because he tried to kill all the residents of Vrindavan, including Krishna. Whereas Lord Brahma didn't have that intention. He was just playing a trick. He put them to sleep in a cave. So Indra's reaction was far more intense, that he got to continue as a lusty demigod, whereas Lord Brahma got a chance to associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
So Gurudev, after committing so many offenses, why Indra is still the leader of all the demigods, and like
Krishna keeps helping.
and Krishna keeps helping all the time?
Do you think it's a blessing to be the leader of the demigods?
No.
No. I mean, it's just I don't think it's a blessing. I think it's, practically speaking, a curse to be the leader of the demigods. But anyway, Indra's a devotee, but you know the story how he has these eyes all over his body because he's just so lusty and attached. I mean, it's very embarrassing to be such a personality like that. So it's not such a great position to be in Indra's position. I would rather be in my position than Indra's position. Because you're thinking it would be good in Indra's position because you get to be in charge of all the demigods, you get to be rich, you got all these dancing girls around you. That's misery. That's actually misery. It's like punishment. The real nectar is like what happened to Lord Brahma, and being Haridas Thakur and being absorbed in Krishna's holy names. Yashaham anagirinami huri sheta danamshanai, Krishna says. For those who I especially favor, I take everything away. Sometimes when Krishna gives you everything and you're not a great devotee, that everything is not really a blessing. It's just because you were so damn materially attached that Krishna understood you had to have it. Whereas for those who were special, like with Prabhupada, Krishna took everything away from him, and Prabhupada basically took that as an impetus or as a blessing, and then went to preach Krishna consciousness, and then Krishna gave him everything so that Prabhupada could use everything in his service. So don't look at it externally. You know, sometimes people look at it externally, especially people from India look at something externally. You see someone very wealthy and you think, oh, he has Krishna's blessings. Like many times people come to me and they say, and I've mentioned this before, they say, Maharaj, give me your blessings. And I say, I bless you to be Krishna conscious. And they say, I don't want that blessing. I want the blessing that my business will be successful. People come and they bring their card to me and they say, I want you to bless my new Rolls Royce or my new whatever it is, Mercedes. They actually even say, we're offering this to Krishna, when in fact they're not offering it to Krishna. They just want Krishna to bless their sense gratification. But a real devotee is when Krishna takes everything away, then the devotee just gets immersed in the holy names. So look what happened to Lord Brahma. That's a blessing. And what happened to Indra, I don't think it's so much of a blessing. But you're thinking, you have this material conception, you're thinking we're really blessed because we have this nice big house and we have everything we want and we're healthy. We're really blessed. Of course, that may be Krishna's blessing, but that's not the real blessing. The real blessing is a taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna.
Yes.
That's a real blessing. Other things, I'm really blessed. I can think I'm really blessed. I have a nice car. What else do I have that I'm really blessed? I have so many servants. No, that's not a blessing. Blessing is to have a taste for hearing and chanting. Otherwise, life is just a waste of time. Dharma swanasita pumsams vishwaksena gata yad. Not padiyad yadi ratim shrama evi kevalam. If one does everything nicely but doesn't get the blessing of getting a taste for hearing and chanting, then his life really isn't blessed. Okay?
So Gurudev, from this, do we understand that Indra is not a devotee, but Brahma is?
No, Indra is a devotee. He's a sakama devotee.
Like
Sakama means he's a devotee, but he really wants to use Krishna consciousness to enjoy. So demigods are generally sakama devotees. That means they say, I want to serve Krishna by being the boss. Like people will do that. Like I said, I want to serve Krishna by being a GBC. So Krishna gives me a position. That's sakama. Anyway, by being in charge. So
ask one question.
that's sakama. Indra's definitely a devotee. It's just that he's not a very high devotee. Whereas Lord Brahma is a very high devotee.
Hmm.
I mean, if Indra was a pure devotee, he would have never thought of trying to kill the residents of Vrindavan. He actually attempted murder. Just think about it. Whereas Lord Brahma never attempted murdering anyone. He was just like trying to test Krishna. That's the difference. Okay.
Thank you,
So
Gurudev.
I
Can
think
one more
Krishna-
question? Gurudev?
What's that?
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah, one more question.
Gurudev, I've come across two writings. I think one was in Lilamrita, where it mentioned about Srila Prabhupada's younger brother, when he bought that house which was haunted and family refused to go there, and he was calling his brother for help. Krishna Das something. Does he have a brother?
Prabhupada has a younger brother, but the story I heard was that Prabhupada bought the house and Prabhupada got rid of the ghosts. That was the
Yes.
story Prabhupada told.
But he called his brother to help with the business. So that means
Yeah.
he has younger brother, Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada had a brother, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's not his cousin, but he has a real brother.
Well, from what I understand, he had a brother.
Okay, Guru.
Because you see a picture of Prabhupada with his younger brother, and Prabhupada actually had bought a car for his younger brother to use as a taxi business.
Okay.
Prabhupada set up a taxi business. Prabhupada was one of the first people to buy a car. See, Prabhupada was very much into technology.
Yes.
So he had a car so he could have a taxi business and probably made money at it. Okay?
Thank
All
you.
right,
Gurudev.
actually, okay, it's time. We'll see everybody tomorrow evening. All glorious to His